All right, what's up, guys? Mike Thomas, aka the Young Trishula here. Today, I'm here with chat. They're here. Chat, you can say hi. I'm here with you guys. We're doing this live over on Twitch at twitch.tv/TrishulatTV. Go check us out if you have not already. We have a lot of fun over there. And today we're talking about the ban list. The ban list, long overdue. We've had a ban list for literally every aspect of the game. OCG, Master Duel, I think even Speed Duel? Did Speed Duel get a ban list? I don't know. Ban players. We've had all the ban lists. We don't have the TCG ban list, so I think it's time to talk about it. We have never done a ban list video before. In the Trishula expanded universe, we have never done this before. So we're doing it now, live on Twitch. So I've put together a list of 30 some odd cards that I feel like we can talk about. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about these cards together, and I'm going to share my thoughts on them, whether or not they should be banned, whether or not they need to be limited. They could be semi-limited, unlimited, or if these cards are going to dodge the ban list completely. And I think this is what's going to make it interesting, chat, because I never see YuGiTubers do this. I never see anybody talk about cards that like are an issue or could come back or whatever, or are going to completely dodge the ban list at all. So I've included this, and this is the wild card. So just because I've put it here does not mean that we're putting it on the list somewhere. It might just dodge completely. All right, so here's the list. Here's where we're at. Say hi, chat. The first card I think we have to talk about is Mystic Mine. I think everybody knows what's going on with this card. I think it's pretty obvious that Mystic Mine should probably be banned. I don't think that this needs too much discussion. This card should probably be banned. I think it's been in every YCS winning main deck for the past like 4 YCSs. Like the past 4 or 5 YCSs, I think every single champion has main decked this card, which is new. That has never been the case before when it comes to Mystic Mine. I think the format has changed to such a point that this card has dramatically warped the format. And the other thing that I think is making Mystic Mine maybe bannable now where it wasn't before is the fact that it is dragging the format out to an absolute crawl. This format is very grindy. This format is not blowouts. And Mystic Mine is forcing people to waste time, and with the TCG ban time rules, it causes problems. And you see like every top cut deck now is playing a win in time condition. Everybody's playing Cowboy, everybody's playing Skullmark Ladybug, everybody's playing like even Agave Dragon, which was like the joke card for winning in time. Like that was always a meme card for winning in time, and we're playing it now. So you know, I think this card is largely part of that issue. So I think it is time for Mystic Mine to be banned. I could see it going to 1. I could see it going to 1. Because I do think there is skill expression with this card. And I know that will upset people. People will not be happy about me saying that. But I think there is definite skill expression with Mystic Mine. But I think the issue is I think this card is warping the format to where it's like no longer skillful. I think this card is just causing problems now. Next card. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think we need to ban Super Poly. I think it's time to ban Super Poly again. This card has been on and off the ban list for the past decade, really. And I think so. Previously, Super Poly has been kind of like okay, because it wasn't too common in the format. Like it was a thing. It was always an option to break like unbreakable boards and like soft FTKs. However, the problem with it was that it wasn't just like something that you could play against every deck. Like it was very specific. You had to play like specific targets. But because of Garura, the new TCG exclusive, this card is absolutely disgusting. You can put this in against so many decks now and just absolutely destroy them. So many decks just hard lose to Super Poly now. And I feel like it's a lot of decks that are not supposed to lose to Super Poly. On top of that, too, this feels a lot like 2015 like Super Poly Doll format, where the best deck is a fusion deck, like a high ceiling fusion deck. And you're just main decking 3 super polys for the mirror match, and the mirror match just boils down to who draws the super poly, and it makes that matchup feel a lot less skillful and a lot less interesting. But I think I could also see this card going to 1. I don't know if they've ever taken super poly from 3 to 0 before. I think this is like Mystic Mine. I think this is one of those options where like super poly can be skillful. It is a good out. We did just get Garura, so like people want to play with their Garuras. I think putting it at 1 makes it so that you're not putting this card in every deck. Actually, as I'm talking about it, I kind of want to move it down to limited. Because I think Super Poly is better when, you know, not every deck can play it, and it's just like the power one of in a deck that's already playing super polyable cards. But the problem with limiting it is it's gonna feel like you're getting sacked. Like, you're gonna feel like you get sacked if they draw the one of Super Poly. So I think banning it is reasonable. I'm gonna put it at a limit though. I'm gonna say limit Super Poly, because this card is a problem. I think, yeah, this card's a problem, but I think it would be okay at 1. Maybe we could see it like one of those situations where we limit it for a format and then we ban it. But I'm gonna say Super Poly to 1. Next card that we're talking about, Dimension Shifter. People have seen the memes. People have seen the Jesse Cotton memes already. Everybody saw the picture of Jesse Cotton losing to Ray in the finals of YCS Niagara. Also, shout out Raymond Young Dye. Good friend of mine, by the way. Dimension Shifter is a really powerful hand trap that hasn't seen a lot of play before. It usually only sees play in decks that people don't like to play against, like back row decks. Like Flaunderies and Altergeist, and now it's starting to see play in like stuff like Exo Sister. It sees a little bit of play in the Sprite sideboard, where I think it could be the most degenerate. However, I personally don't think Dimension Shifter is all that toxic, and here's why. Dimension Shifter is functionally very similar to Nibiru, where both cards punish the opponent for trying to play a combo deck that puts all their resources on the board on their first turn. Here's the difference though. A lot of decks that can play Dimension Shifter either cannot play Nibiru or do not have the ability to capitalize on that Nibiru, right? Like, they don't have for one of 2 reasons. Either they cannot play enough hand traps in their main deck to always see a pairing of Nibiru plus a hand trap, or the alternative is that they don't have enough gas to actually make nibbing and stopping the opponent like good enough. Like, they're gonna nib them and like set 3 cards, right? And that's usually not good enough, because usually the token is huge. They just switch the token to attack, and that's already a threat, and you know, they don't always have a way to deal with that. So I actually think Dimension Shifter is fair, because it gives those really, really slow decks the ability to play the game against combo. So I think if we were to get rid of Dimension Shifter, it would be hurting decks that are really annoying to play against, but not sufficiently strong enough to where it merits like hurting them and eliminating them as a viable playstyle. So for that reason, I'm gonna say that Dimension Shifter dodges this ban list. I think Shifter dodges because the decks that are playing Dimension Shifter are not decks that are like super, super scary. Because, as you know, a lot of people were sleeping on Exo Sister too. Like, Exo Sister is the only new deck that's playing this. I think the only decks that play Dimension Shifter are Flunder, Exo Sister, Altergeist, Grenmaju, and the Sprite sideboard occasionally. Yeah, so like, of those decks, 2 of those are meta, and 1 of them was considered like a rogue deck. So I think Dimension Shifter dodges. Now let's talk about Artifact Scythe. Artifact Scythe is extremely divisive. This card is extremely upsetting. Whenever this card enters play, people are upset. This card is like a turn skip button. Everybody wants this card banned, because this card causes issues in the format, like, or in formats where there always seems to be, especially at the start of formats, it's really easy to turbo out Scythe and just say, okay, Scythe is my win condition, because people aren't prepared for it, right? Especially at the start of formats where people are playing hand traps instead of like going second spells like droplets and stuff. Scythe comes up a lot, and I think where Scythe becomes a problem is decks like Adventure Sprite, because I think Charlie's been playing that a lot, like Charlie Futch. He's been playing a lot of Adventure Sprite that Scythe locks, from the best of my knowledge, or at least he was, and he's been doing really well at events with that deck. I don't know if he played it for Niagara. I haven't seen Charlie in a few weeks, but I think that deck is partially why this is scary. I think you can always just fall back on the, like, you know, old reliable of just playing Hulk Adventure and then like vomiting this stuff on the field, which makes this card a little bit too powerful. But with all of that said, I think it dodges. I think Scythe dodges the ban list, and here's why. Goes into the next 3 cards. I think the issue is not necessarily Scythe. I think it's the cards that enable Scythe. I think stuff like the Adventure package is why Scythe is so strong, because what always happens is they set up the Adventure package nice and early, and then you can't stop them from getting to the Scythe unless you draw a double hand trap. That is what makes it an issue, because historically Scythe decks usually are really fragile. Like, usually there's a lot going on, especially with like Dagda too. Like if the deck is revolving around Dagda, it's actually really easy to stop Scythe, because if they go, you know, if they just have Dagda Hulk on field and they tag out Hulk, if you have any card that activates in the hand, like let's call it even DD Crow. Like, I know that their Scythe is not in play yet, but like DD Crow still beats them, because you just activate DD Crow, snipe anything in their graveyard. It doesn't even matter what it is, and Dagda will miss timing. So it's not as bad as you really think, you know, in my opinion. I think stuff like Scythe is actually very manageable in the format. I think actually the most degenerate thing, I think the most degenerate Scythe lock in the format is actually just setting Artifact Sanctum. I think that's actually the most degenerate way that this card is played, is when people just side 3 Sanctum and a Scythe. And outside of that, I don't think it's actually all that toxic. Like, I hate this card. I would love to see it banned. Like, I would be happy if this card was banned and I never have to play against it again. But I think it's going to dodge. I think it's going to dodge because I don't think that Scythe is really a problem card. And with that said, let's talk about the Adventure package now, because I think the Adventure package, and by extension Halki Fibrax, I think this is what's enabling a lot of the degeneracy in like Scythe combo decks. So every Scythe combo deck that I can think of in the past like year and a half has revolved around these cards, and there's different ways that we can go about hitting it. You know, you could go like kind of an OCG route of hitting like the Water Enchantress, like maybe semi-limit Rite of Arameser, and make it kind of difficult to like see this package, right? And then, like, you know, on the off chance you see it, right, you have it. So like if we limited Water Enchantress and semi-limited Rite of Arameser, if you include Foolish Burial, that only gives you 4 copies of these cards in your deck, which is a lot better than the 7 copies that you currently have if you were playing these cards. So with that said, this is one good way to hit the Adventure package. However, it's not my preferred way. I don't like hitting these cards. Instead, I actually agree with the OCG, and I think that ban Griffin is really the solution. I think ban Griffin is really the correct hit, and it's honestly like really simple. My like logic on this is that the whole reason that the Adventure cards are played in combo decks is that you get an Omni Negate that allows you to go into another Omni Negate super easily. Like, so like Halki Fibrax, since this is the next card to talk about, summons out the Rose Dragon cards, right? I guess we could have put the Rose Dragons on the ban list while I'm thinking about it, but I think like what would happen would be like you would summon out your Rose Dragon or whatever tuner you're playing, and you synchro with your Baron into, or you synchro with your Griffin into Baron. You summon out the Rocks Rose, and then you make Shooting Riser. You send the Scythe or however you set it up, and then you like continue to play, right? Or maybe you dump Snow and then you make Dagda. The problem with all of that is that if you get rid of the Griffin, that becomes so dangerous to do because it loses to Ash, it loses to Valor, it loses to Imperm, it loses to Gamma, it loses to Nibiru. All of those, like, that's 5 hand traps where if you draw any single one of them, you're shutting down their line of play. You are shutting down their line of play because they don't have that Griffin Omni Negate. And I think if you just get rid of the Griffin Omni Negate, the Adventure package actually becomes really fair and interesting, where it becomes this really cool going second package for a lot of decks where they can play like Illegal Knight. So like something like Gren Maju, for example, could be really cool with these cards because you could, you know, use Illegal Knight just to clear up the field and then summon a monster that doesn't have a normal summon effect, and then you just poke with it. And it doesn't also invalidate people from playing those like Scythe Lock combo strategies if they wanted to, because they could just play the Illegal Knight and use that to go into Baron. But that's the thing with it, is that if they do have the, you know, like if they get as far as Illegal Knight into the full combo, right? Like if they go Illegal Knight into Baron and then they set up their Scythe and whatever, and you can't stop that. What's happened is you've probably drawn no hand traps, and if you're playing against any combo deck and you draw no hand traps, you're probably losing anyway, you know, or you're just playing board breakers, right? So I think that makes it fair. And so that is why Scythe I'm leaving dodged and instead banning the Griffin. And it could be the case though that if you make this hit and then Scythe is still a huge problem in the format, then you just move Scythe up here. But I think the first hit that I would make is hit Griffin Rider, see if that changes the format up, see if Scythe is still a problem. If Scythe is still a problem afterward, then you ban it. If not, just leave it dodged. Now, next up, it's kind of in the same vein. Hulk, I think we keep limited, or i.e. say dodged, because I think, again, the Hulk combos, they just die to any hand trap if you don't have this Omni Negate to protect everything. But the other thing, too, is that Hulk allows a lot of decks to perform competently. Hulk allows a lot of decks to stay meta relevant. And it's actually, I actually think that Hulk is a really well-designed card that helps game design, because if you're thinking about a deck, like let's think about your little pet deck or whatever deck exists that isn't good. Like let's take a deck that is really, really bad and give it a tuner. Suddenly that deck can start making plays. That tuner, all you need is one tuner with a decent effect to make an old archetype viable because of Hulk. And it doesn't even have to be like overpowered. It could just be like a tuner that summons itself, and suddenly an old archetype could have new life breathed into it. And for that reason, I think Hulk at 1 is healthy. I think it lets decks do healthy stuff, and I think they've banned so many of the problematic tuners that I don't think that Hulk is really a problem. Also, with no Auroradon in the game, you know, like Hulk on its own isn't a 1-card combo like ever anymore. So I think Hulk is okay. I think Hulk is okay to stay. Make it level 2 for Gigantic Sprite. Ah, yeah, there you go. There you go. That is one thing that you could say though, right? Is that Hulk is a little bit troubling because it can let you go full Sprite combo in decks that you shouldn't. Hulk Selene access is disgusting. No, I think Hulk Selene is fine. I think Hulk Selene is fine because it requires you to be playing Valor, and it requires you to commit an extra deck slot specifically to summoning access code with Hulk, which I think is fine. Like, because Hulk is a one-of. And then if you want to play a 14-card extra deck where one of those cards is a way to summon access code if your Hulk resolves, I think that's fine. I think that's a fair trade in terms of deck building. Like, it's scary when it happens, but I think it's a fair trade. You're committing a lot of your deck space into just trying to find an OTK path, which is good because every deck needs to be able to OTK now in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, if you can't OTK, something's going wrong. Like, your deck isn't good enough. So I think Hulk Selene is really healthy for rogue decks because it gives you that ability to actually get back into the game if you fall behind. Now let's talk about Snow. I think Snow is a problem. I don't know why this card came back. This card is really, really strong. Snow is really strong. This card on its own is part of why Tearlaments is the best deck. It's part of why, it's predominantly why me as a Dragon Link player have been able to take Dragon Link in this current format and do well. Because I can tell you without hesitation that it's not the Dragon Link part of the deck that's doing the heavy lifting when you go first. It's Snow. Like, Snow is what is keeping you alive. It's keeping your opponent off the board. It is a card that can come back over and over and over again. And in a format where your graveyard is basically your hand, this card is way too powerful. I think that this card needs to be banned. I think that this is the Snatch Steal of our generation. I think that we brought it back. We had our fun with it. I don't think we're capable, we're responsible enough for this kind of power. I think that this needs to go. I don't want it to go. I love this card. It makes me happy. I enjoy playing with Snow, but I think it needs to go. I think that this card is single-handedly one of the most problematic cards in the current game. Destrudo, though, can stay. I didn't put Destrudo on the list, but Destrudo can stay. This one needs to go, though. Let's talk about now Totally Awesome. This is another card I think is getting the axe. I think Toad is gone. I think Toad is gone because it makes Sprite really, really oppressive when they go first. You know, like the fact that Gigantic Sprite alone turns into basically not like an unbreakable board, but a really difficult board to deal with. The fact that it steals your cards. So like if you try to grind with Sprite, they're going to take your cards. So like if you play Pot of Desires, you know, to like bait into the Sprite board, they get to steal it and they get to Pot of Desires you next turn, which is really upsetting because it now feels like you have to out your own Pot of Desires. And I think part of the issue too is that it's not just Sprite that can play this. Like Christian Arena played Totally Awesome in his Tearlament deck, and I believe the Oceanics list did as well because of Bahamut Shark. I think the fact that this card is just all over the current format, it makes it a little bit too annoying. Before it was limited to like exactly Paleozoics. And Paleo Frog, I can't remember if this was hit in the TCG at one point and we got it back, or if that was OCG where it was hit, they got it back and then they lost it again. But before it was confined to Paleozoic, and that was fine. Like, this being their boss monster was totally fair because Paleozoic was a very slow deck. But summoning this card out on turn 1 and then summoning it back over and over and over again is a lot. The fact that this card for Sprite, once it enters play, it never leaves play, is a lot. And the fact that you can also recycle it too in Tearlament is really annoying because you can like stick the Bahamut Shark to your field, summon the Totally Awesome, sack off the Toad, and then on your opponent's turn or even on your turn again, fuse using the Toad because it's an Aqua, summon the Kit Kolos, and then when it passes back to you, like if they don't out your Bahamut Shark, you can just summon an Omni Negate immediately again. So it turns Bahamut Shark into a threat, which is silly. Bahamut Shark was a threat when Mermail was the best deck. Bahamut Shark should not be sitting on the field, and you shouldn't be sitting there thinking to yourself, how do I attack over Bahamut Shark in 2022? So for that reason, I think that this card needs to go. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't, though. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it dodged, but I think it needs to go. Next is Barrier Statue, and I'll actually move Winda up. I think both of these cards are cards that a lot of people, similar to Shifter and Scythe, want to see banned, because these are cards that, you know, they do functionally the same thing as Scythe. They lock you out of playing the game. Similarly, I think these cards are going to dodge. Flunder, I don't think is doing anything. And Winda is interesting because of Tearlament. I don't think Tearlament or Sprite are going to get significantly hit directly, especially with how many, like, how much the next sets are, like, supporting these cards, for, like, the foreseeable future. So I think, like, more indirect hits that limit the kind of the abuse that these decks can do outside of their own engine, I think those are better hits. Whereas, like, these cards, I just don't feel like they're powerful enough. Winda, I feel like, is very easy to deal with. And Barrier Statue, I also feel like is very easy to deal with. Because Flunder feels like a very easy deck to deal with. I don't really, you know, like, it's annoying when you get Barrier Statued out of a game, but I just don't think it's a problem. I really don't think these cards are problematic enough. I think that, you know, if we wanted to hit Barrier Statue, I would ban Robina before I would ban Barrier Statue. I think that ban Robina would be the better hit than ban Barrier Statue, because just like with Simorgh, it's not the Barrier Statue that's the problem. It's the card that makes this card searchable that's the problem. So I don't think that this card's an issue. You know, both of these cards just fold to any negate, which is, you know, just draw the out. But I feel like these cards aren't popular enough to where they merit being banned. Now let's talk about, how many cards is this? This is 5. We've gone through 12 cards. We're about a third of the way through the cards I've prepared for us to talk about today. So because we're a third of the way through, I think it's now time for us to start getting into some more deeper cuts. So these, I feel like, are the kind of the obvious cards, right? Like cards that everybody has on their mind. But I think there's other cards that are, like, problematic or slightly problematic that we can talk about, and I want to get into those. I think it's time to get into the deeper cuts. So this is almost like a self-report here, but I think Papega could be banned. So let's talk about Papega. It makes no sense to limit Papega. Semi-limit is absolutely asinine. So the only place where Papega could go would be banned. The only place that Papega could go would be banned. I don't know if it's a good idea to hit Papega. Papega is a really strong card. It is definitely a ban-worthy card. I don't know if it's ban-worthy on this ban list. And part of the reason for that is the only deck in my mind that summons this is, like, Dragon Link, right? Like, Dragon is, like, the only deck that consistently summons this card. Punk decks sometimes make it, but the thing is that in, like, Punk decks, there's not much that's good for them to hit. Like, this card's really good in Dragons because you have a lot of really good targets. So I think that this card is ban-worthy, but I don't know if Dragon needs to be hit. Dragon is already, you know, kind of hit by hitting Snow and Griffin. You know, hitting these two kills dragons in my mind. So I think this is an overhit, so I think it's going to dodge. The reason why I wanted to mention Papega, though, is that the next major event will be played with Darkwing Blast. And as you might know, Darkwing Blast introduced the Beisted cards. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the Beisteds are the new... They're like the not Dogmatica. They're like the branded dragon cards. And in OCG, pure Dragon Link with Beisted has been performing prior to their ban list. So with full power Ishizu, Tearlament, and whatever, pure Dragon Link with Beisted cards was like the second or third best deck over there. And it was going toe to toe with full power Ishizu, Tearlament, which is crazy to me. Like, the fact that those cards are that good into the Tearlament matchup is insane to me. So I could see them hitting this, not this ban list, but maybe the next, because then, you know, like, Dragon Link could have a resurgence here in the TCG as a counter pick to a Shizu Tearlament when we get those cards. But that's yet to be seen. I did want to mention that though, because I think that this card, there's like a target on this card's back, but I don't think it's ready to be banned yet. Like, it wouldn't shock me if it was like preemptively banned for that format, but I don't think it's going to be banned yet. The next card to talk about is Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion is really powerful. Instant Fusion has always been kind of the problem card. This card is really, really strong. I think we could see an instant ban. I think instant ban is a thing that could happen, largely because of Tearlament. I don't know if it will get banned. I don't know if it will get banned. So I'm going to put it in dodge tier. I think it's going to go into dodge tier because I'm not confident that it'll be banned. And the reason I'm not confident it'll be banned is that I think Instant Fusion is one of those cards where they clearly design monsters to be summoned off of Instant Fusion. So I think they put it at 1 so that they could still design monsters to be summoned off Instant Fusion, and that they just don't want you to like have 3 of this card so that it's all the time. I wouldn't be shocked if it's banned, but I think it dodges. The next card that I want to talk about, I think, is Harp Horror. I think it's time to bring Harp Horror back. I think I don't think Harp is going to do anything. So the argument to keep Harp banned like where it is, I think the argument to keep it in like dodge tier is that, at least as of a couple years ago when like I was playing traditional format for fun, Pure Orcust and Pure Zodiac were the 2 best decks. But I think this card can come back. Like, I don't think one Harp Horror is that scary. Like, I don't think Orcust is that good anymore. Especially if Super Poly dodges. Like, if Super Poly dodged and it didn't go to 1 like I think it would be, this card would be super fine. Like, I just don't think that Orcust is doing enough. The only reason that it might dodge and stay banned is that people might play Tearlament Orcust, which could be really scary, but I think that sounds really cool and I would like to see that. So I think I'm gonna put Harp to 1. Next card that we can potentially talk about bringing back is MX Saber Invoker. I'm not really sure what MX Saber Invoker would do if it came back. I really don't know what this card would do if it came back. I'm not really sure why it's banned. It could just, like, you know, it could stay banned because, you know, it's prohibitive. You know, it would make beasts and beast warriors too strong. I don't think it's that scary though. I think that this card can come back. I think MX Saber Invoker could come back. I think that it's pretty restrictive. It locks you into like level 4 beasts, or like beast warriors, I guess. But I think this could come back. You could splash Zodiacs and Punk. See, but I feel like that would be cool. Like, I feel like that'd be okay. You know, like, I don't think the synergy is really oppressive because all Zodiac does right now is make Zeus. And if you're putting cards on the field to get them out of your deck, you're losing the card that you use to tutor it out of your deck. So I don't think that this card is a problem. I don't think it's a problem, chat. Like, I think that this card's okay. I think that MX Saber Invoker could come back. Now, the next card I want to talk about, actually, I'm gonna move this forward. Next 2 cards I want to talk about have to do with Darkwing Blast. And if you don't know already, in Darkwing Blast, the next main set that we're getting in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, there is an archetype of Draco Slayers. Draco Slayers is getting a new pendulum archetype that's actually pretty cool. I think it's actually pretty good too, if I'm not mistaken. And I think to promote that deck, one of 2 things could happen. And I'm going to pretend like both of them are going to happen, but you as the viewer are going to understand that these are mutually exclusive. If one of these 2 things happens, the other one does not happen. So those 2 things could be Draco Slayer back to 3, or Face Off back to 3. So Draco Slayer Face Off could come back to 3, or Electromite could go to 1. I think either of these changes on the ban list would be a really cool addition to make that new Draco Slayer deck viable and make it competitive in the current format. We just got Monkey Board back, so I think Konami is at least looking at Pendulum again and saying, can we reintroduce this into the game? Every time they have given us Pendulum and like given us good Pendulum cards, it's been a problem. But I think it could come back. I really think that these could come back. OCG has Electromite and it's fine. And Slayer, like Face Off, it's Face Off. Like this is the heart and soul of Draco Slayers. If they don't bring this back to 3, I really don't know what they're doing. I think it's kind of like it's shooting the Draco Slayer deck in the foot before we even get it. So I really think that of the two, I think the one that's more likely is Face Off to 3. Next thing to talk about is the virus cards. I think the next cards that we can talk about are the virus cards. And the virus cards are interesting. These are cards that... So all of the virus cards, like Crush Card, Eradicator, and Deck Devastator, all of them have been on the ban list at some point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Currently, they're all unlimited to 3. We see these cards be played right now. Like they've had a resurgence. Eradicator especially is... Eradicator is seeing play like in main decks. We saw this in a few of the top lists at... YCS Niagara, and I'm just now realizing that Nightmare Griffin is not in here in the tier list. I just realized that Nightmare Griffin is just not here. So what we're gonna do, chat, what we're gonna do is I'm going to in post I'm going to convert one of these skill drains to Nightmare Griffin because I just realized it's not in here. But I think these cards are interesting at the very least. I know Chris Lofton, before he was banned, was playing a version of Despia Terralament that sided 3 of both of these and 3 Trap Trick, because he just wanted to see these and he would just virus you. It was basically virus control. So these cards are interesting. I think they're dodging. Like, I don't think these cards are going on the ban list, but I think that we could start reevaluating whether or not these cards are healthy. I think Eradicator is really, really healthy at 3 as long as Mystic Mind's at 3. I think that this card could start becoming oppressive if Mystic Mind disappears. But I'm not exactly sure how I feel about these yet. I think that's a little bit... I think that remains to be seen a little bit. I guess it really depends on how powerful a Shizu tier becomes. So these cards I think could be on the chopping block for the next ban list. I don't think it would be this ban list, but these cards are interesting. I think that these cards are worth giving a critical eye to. Another card that chat wanted me to discuss is Pot of Prosperity, and I'm actually going to use this also to talk about Pot of Desires. I personally think that it is really goofy and kind of stupid to hit the pot cards. I think the pot cards are healthy cards. I think that having consistency cards in Yu-Gi-Oh is a good thing. I think we have moved to a state of Yu-Gi-Oh where the game is very fast, and if you do not see specific cards, you just lose. So I think that these cards are fair. They require you to deck build in interesting ways. I think, like with Pot of Prosperity, you have to think about what cards you can and can't afford to banish out of your extra deck. With Pot of Desires, you have to do the math on, whether or not you can afford to banish 10 cards from your deck. And, like on average, on average, Pot of Desires is never like bad. Like on average, the edge cases, it's like, oh no, I banished all 3 of my starter card. But if that starter card wasn't in your opening hand to begin with, you didn't have it in the first place. So it being banished, not really a big deal. But that RNG factor of sometimes this card has sometimes this card just screws you over, I think makes the simple draw too fair. I think that makes it fair that you're taking a calculated risk to activate Pot of Greed. I think that's fine. So I would say Pot of Prosperity, I don't think it's going to 1. I don't think it's getting hit like people seem to think it will. And I think we can bring Pot of Desires back to 3. At 2, I think it's fine. Like, I think that this card is fine at 2 because you're not seeing it dropped every game. And I think that this card is really powerful. Especially in a deck like Terralament, I think that this card's really strong. So I'm not saying that Pot of Desires is like too weak to be, you know, like 2-1 or banned, but I just personally, like, my philosophy is I would want all the pot cards at 3. So I think that this card comes back to 3. So another speaking of cards coming back to 3 is Gen X Ally Birdman. This is a card that just came back to 3 in the OCG. This, I think, was a huge mistake on OCG's part. I think that this card is extremely powerful, especially because we have dangers. I think that Gen X Ally Birdman is a card where, like, it's like Zephyros the Elite, but you don't have to put it in your graveyard. So you could go danger, reveal a danger, special, like, let's talk about Nessie, for example. You could go reveal danger Nessie, special summon Nessie, draw a card. Gen X Ally Birdman, bounce Nessie back to your hand, reveal Nessie again, special summon it. And then from there, you could either go into Halki Fibrax or you could go into Baron de Fleur. And personally, I think that Birdman is a little bit too strong, but I really like this card. So for that reason, I'm going to just, I'm going to say we unlimit it. I say we try. I think it's a bad idea. I think we try it anyway. Because I don't know if Ari is still in chat, but we have an OCG viewer. OCG has, and they were telling us about this. OCG has 3 Birdman, 3 Divine, and then they have 3 of the field spell. I don't remember the name of the field spell, but the one that summons a wind from your deck when something bounces to your hand. Those cards are both at 3, and they're probably going to do nothing in OCG. I don't know if that would also be the case in TCG. I don't know if that would be the case in TCG. I think I would be open to seeing this card come back to 3 because I think it's interesting. I think that this card is interesting. It allows for interesting scenarios to occur. I think that there is a skillful way to play this card, and I don't hate it, but I also think that this card is really toxic, and I really think it should stay limited, but let's put it at 3. Next card I want to talk about is Chicken Game. This is something that I don't know how to feel about because of Master Duel. This card is legal in Master Duel and nobody plays it. Like, it's just not good. And OCG doesn't play it either, and they have this card legal. I don't really understand because I lived through this format in the TCG and I remember how obnoxious this card was. But here's how I kind of feel about Chicken Game is I almost feel like we could put Chicken Game back to 1. I think we could put back Chicken Game to 1. And I think it kind of ties into my philosophy with Pot of Greed, where I think having consistency guards in the game is good. And I think there's an interesting restriction on Chicken Game where both players are allowed to use it. So it creates a scenario where you don't want to keep this card on the field. I think where this card could become problematic is in Terulement because they already play a 3 of field spell. So I think that Chicken Game could be a little problematic, but the way I look at Chicken Game is it's still just an upstart goblin. Like, it's just a reverse upstart goblin, or like in the best case scenario, it's a reverse upstart goblin where you burn 1,000 life points and you draw a card. And like, it's slightly better than Upstart Goblin because you have terraforming and you can search it, which is fine. But I think Chicken Game back to 1 is actually okay, especially with something like Mystic Mind gone, where it allows for that scenario to where, like, while it's on the field, like, neither player can, like, kind of win the game, but like, you don't want to leave Chicken Game on the field because if you leave it on the field, your opponent starts with a 7-card hand. So I think that there is a risk reward to this card. I don't think that this is something that in this era of Yu-Gi-Oh you can just blindly leave on the field, and for that reason I think it's okay at 1. And not only that too, I think something we've been seeing, like with Upstart Goblin, for example, is we don't play Upstart in our decks anymore. Like, how often do you see Upstart in topping lists anymore? And I think what part of the issue is that Yu-Gi-Oh cards are just too strong now. There are better cards to put in your deck. If you're choosing to put, like, say you have a 39 card deck, you're choosing to put Chicken Game as that 40th card instead of, like, Called by the Grave. So I think Chicken Game can come back. I think it's really powerful. I think that this is a strong release off the ban list. I think it could come back. I think Chicken Game is fine. I think that this is just like another copy of Upstart Goblin, and I think it'd be okay to put this card at 1. I could be wrong, but you can tell me about that in the comments. The next card is Nightmare Griffin. Nightmare Griffin. So this is going to be edited in post because I forgot to put it in the video. Nightmare Griffin, I think Nightmare Griffin's weird. So this is kind of part of the conversation with the 2 virus cards. Whenever Nightmare Griffin is, I've never seen this card played healthily. I have never seen Nightmare Griffin be played in a non-toxic way, because it always searches out like Imperial Order, which we don't have anymore, or now it searches out like Eradicator. I think that Nightmare Griffin should be banned. And I don't think it's because Nightmare Griffin is particularly problematic. I just think that it is a card that inherently promotes degenerate game plans. And I think that, I don't know, I think there's issues with Nightmare Griffin. Isn't Griffin insane because of elf protection? Oh yeah, having Sprite Elf to protect it as well now too makes it really toxic. Like, it's a floodgate monster that usually searches a floodgate that we can now protect with Sprite Elf. I think that it's a card that if we don't ban it will become problematic. I don't think it's super problematic right now. I don't think it has been problematic in the past. I just think that it has a lot of potential in coming formats to become really problematic. And for that reason, I want it banned. I want it banned preemptively. I think that this card's going to become a problem. It's too much of an investment to search something that isn't degen. Exactly. So like, it's so much of an investment that the only time that this card is ever played, it's something super degenerate. And with decks like Terralment, like vomiting out Curious, I think that Griffin is an issue. And like the fact that with the Ishizu cards, you don't even need the Curious anymore. Like, you will mill so many cards playing the Ishizu stuff that Griffin could just be a generic Link 4 in Terralment that you don't have to really set up. So I think it needs to go. I think it needs to go, and if it doesn't go, I think the next format could get really, really degenerate. The next card I want to talk about is Skill Drain. So it's not fake Skill Drain, it is Skill Drain. And Skill Drain's interesting. They just brought it back, so I think it'll dodge. Like, realistically, I think it'll dodge. I wouldn't mind it going to 2 though. Like, I don't like Skill Drain. I hate this card. I hate this card. Like, it's similar. It's like Imperial Order for monsters. But you know, they just brought it back, so I don't think that they're gonna like. I don't think they'd limit it. I don't think they'd ban it. I think they might semi-limit it, maybe as like to test the waters. But this chat, this may or may not just be on here so that I can put something in the semi-limit column. But yeah. So that's all I have to say about Skill Drain. Moving on is Wind Up Party Boat. Please unlimit it. This card's not going to do anything. Please unlimit the Party Boat. That's all. I think if you unlimit Party Boat, you probably have to ban Wind Up Hunter. Like, you probably have to do that. I forgot to put Wind Up Hunter in the list, but just unlimit the Party Boat, please. Like, it's not going to do anything. It's Wind Ups. Next card to talk about is Tenki. I think we can unlimit Tenki. I think we're past Tri Brigade's Prime and Zodiac's Prime. I think this card can come back. I don't think it's doing anything impressive. The one interesting thing about Tenki is that Lunalight Terralment is a deck that is starting to see play, and I think that deck is really cool. I am a huge Lunalight fan. I think that deck is really, really cool. However, I still don't think it's good enough to where, you know, Tenki, we should like put the cage on Tenki. I think Tenki coming back to 3 is okay. I think it's fine to bring Tenki back to 3, because I think semi-limits to consistency cards don't really do much. I really just don't think it does enough. So I would like to see this back to 3, because I would also like to see some variation in Terralment decks. I think Lunalight Terralment is an interesting strategy. I think that is an interesting way to play Terralment. And it will give people at least some option over the Ishizu cards when those come out. So I think you can put this back to 3. The next card I want to talk about too is also kind of, this might be a hot take. I think we can bring Dust Shoot back to 1. Like, I've been thinking about this for a long time, I think Dust Shoot to 1 is totally fine. And here's part of my logic on this. Dust Shoot, in terms of modern Yu-Gi-Oh, is just a worse version of a pointer of the Red Lotus. Dust Shoot is just a bad pointer because it only hits monsters, and it's really only playable on the first turn because your opponent has to have 4 or more cards in their hands. So I think Dust Shoot to 1 is totally fine. Now, the arguments that couldn't be made that Dust Shoot to 1 is bad because that's a 4th copy of a pointer of the Red Lotus, and a pointer is a really strong card. But I think a pointer is way stronger than Dust Shoot because it can hit spells and traps, and this can't. So I think all this does is punish tribute removal, which I think is fair and fine. I think having a powerful one-of like Dust Shoot in the format is also okay. You know, because we're kind of missing that powerful one-of going first card slot. Like, they took away, like, that card for a long time was Imperial Order. Like, if you had a 14-card side deck and you just needed a card for when you go first, like just a one-of card to like swap out from when you go first, you would put in Imperial Order. And it was that way for like 4.5 years. We don't have that anymore. I think Dust Shoot could be that card. Like, I really think that Dust Shoot could just fill that role as that powerful one-of trap. I don't think that we would want to put it at like 2 because of like trap trick shenanigans and whatever. But I think Dust Shoot to 1 is fine. It's just worse a pointer. I think that this card is okay. Next card, Time Seal, unban it. I have no idea why this card is that one, or banned. I have no idea why this card is banned. This makes no sense, and I'm so glad that OCG finally took this off their ban list. This card should not have been banned for like the past 10 years. The fact that this card has been on the ban list for like 10 years confuses me so much. I don't know why this card was unbanned or banned. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. This card's not good enough. Nobody will ever play Time Seal. Nobody will ever play Time Seal. The only thing I could see Time Seal being relevant for is like a top deck war where you like set Time Seal and then you Time Seal them, and it's like, oh, ha, you don't get to draw, you have no cards. But you're not playing a card like Time Seal for that. That's not gonna come up. It's not realistic. But you know, prove me wrong, but this card can come back. Similar vein, Yada can come back to 3. I don't think Yada is doing anything at 1. Wall of Revealing Light can come back to 3. No idea why this card's at 2. I don't understand. I really don't understand what Wall of Revealing Light is doing in the game. You know, maybe there's something super degen with Wall of Revealing Light that I don't know about, but if you can do it, like, there's already 2 copies of the card. So it doesn't make sense that it's like a you need multiples of it thing, because there's already multiples. So, you know, you can already draw 2 of it and do the degen thing if it exists. So put this to 3. It doesn't make sense. And then the other one, for the last card, I think Morphing Jar can come back to 3. I don't know what Morphing Jar is doing. I guess you could play like some kind of empty jar FTK with 3 of this, like 3 of this, like Cyber Jar and like Morphing 2. But come on, dude, like it's Morphing Jar. I'm pretty sure that any deck that's built around Morphing Jar in 2022 is called I'm going to lose to Terolement, I'm going to lose to Imperm, I'm going to lose to so many things. I just don't get what flip-flop Morphing Jar does in 2022. Yeah, sue me. I think it comes back to 3. And this I think is basically the ban list. I think this is what a potential ban list would look like. So just as a reminder, especially for people in chat who are watching this live, there are some caveats here. This skill drain is a Nightmare Griffin, and then the caveat is that Electromite and Draco Face Off, one of these 2 hits could happen, but not both. So you could either have limit Electromite, or you could have 3 Draco Face Off, but like you couldn't have both. So pick your poison. I think one of those 2 would happen. I think it's more likely that it's Draco Face Off and this stays banned. And then there's a few things that I think could happen that are possible, like MX Saber, Chicken Game, and Dust Shoot. I don't think these cards are like super impactful. Harp Horror, I think, can come back. I think that Harp Horror is fun. I think that Gen XLI Birdman shouldn't come back to 3, but I think it could be an experiment to, you know, go alongside OCG. I think that could be interesting. And then a lot of these unlimits, a lot of these actually, hold on. So if we were to just break down the unlimits, consistency cards should be at 3. Draco Face-Off or Electromite, we could get one or the other. All of these cards, I don't think do really anything if you take them off the ban list. Like, I don't think any of these cards are problematic enough to be on the ban list. Gen X Ally Birdman is fun. Skill Drain is at 2 because I needed to put something in the semi-limit column. And then the bans, I think all of these cards are degenerate and promote degenerate play. Super Poly, I think probably should be banned, but I think at 1 it could be skillful at 1, or it could be interesting at 1 at least, where it still gives decks like basically if you put this to 1, the only deck that's playing this is Terralament and Heroes, but if you ban it, nothing plays it. This, I think limiting it just stops every deck from splashing 3 Super Poly on their side. And then the dodge tier, some of these were just stuff that I wanted to mention, and other stuff was just, we talked about Dimension Shifter. I think Dimension Shifter is actually well designed and fills a annoying but necessary role for much slower decks. Scythe, I think, is not really the problem card and is really more highlighted in this format due to Griffin enabling so many degenerate combos to take place. The adventure cards we talked about, you could hit the adventure cards to just limit the consistency of the package, but I feel like then you just feel like you get sacked when they open these cards and then they still Griffin you and nothing changes. So I think if you just ban the Griffin Rider, it stops the 2-hand trap problem and Scythe becomes a non-issue. And then Halki Fibrax, I think, is very well designed. I don't think this card needs to be banned because it allows too many decks to just play the game. I think if you take it out of the format, I think it becomes over centralized. Because I think if you take Hulk out of the game, what ends up happening is you can only play decks as they're pre-packaged the way Konami gives them to you. Whereas, it also allows Konami to print stuff. Like, you could just have a tuner printed for a new archetype, and suddenly that archetype is relevant because of Hulk. So I think Hulk is fine. Barrier Statue and Winda, I think if you want these cards banned, I think there's a different issue. I think there's a different issue if you want these cards banned. I don't think they're the problems. Papega, I think, is a very bannable card. I just don't think it's this format for it to get banned. Instant Fusion, similarly bannable card, but I think it's similar to Hulk, where they just want to keep it in the game because they design cards around this card's existence. The virus spells, again, I think that these cards are, they're very powerful. Don't know if they're worth hitting, but it's worth keeping an eye on them, because these cards could, this, especially Epidemic Virus. This is basically the new Imperial Order. So really strong. And then Pot of Prosperity, we just talked about this alongside Pot of Desires. Consistency spells shouldn't be hit like that. I feel like the consistency spells, you keep it 3, and then you probably hit the monster instead of the spell. I think that's the ban list that I think that is what my predictions are for the ban list, or what my thoughts on the ban list are, at least. Before I continue, chat, we're gonna do this properly. All right, so those were my thoughts on the ban list, guys. Let me know if you agree, disagree, if you like those changes, if you think they would be healthy. I forgot to stop that one. I forgot that one. I forgot that one. God damn it. Now we have to start over the outro. Anyway, let me know if you agree or disagree with my thoughts on the ban list. Guys, drop me a comment down below. Remember to like and subscribe if you have not already. It really does help me out a lot. But I hope you guys enjoy this video. And I hope to see you in the next one. I'm leaving that in the video. Only you guys will know it's there, because nobody's going to watch an hour-long ban list discussion video.